My phone buzzed during Sunday lunch. Unknown number. The message said, "Don't react, they're recording you." I kept eating, kept smiling, but I looked around that dining room table and realized I was sitting in a trap. Someone at that table wanted me gone, but who, and why? That night I found out the truth. Cameras, hidden in their house, watching me for hours. And when I discovered who was behind it all, my blood ran cold. They thought I'd be easy. A 72-year-old widow, alone, forgettable. They were wrong. Hello everyone, before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. Now back to the story. The pot roast smelled perfect. Simone only made pot roast when she wanted something. I stood on their front porch earlier that afternoon with a store-bought pie, the Sunday sun warm on my back. Now here I was, surrounded by my son Julian, his wife Simone, and their daughter Cleo. My granddaughter sat across from me, 17 and quiet, barely touching her food. Something felt wrong, had felt wrong since I walked through that door. I glanced at my phone again, the words burning into my mind. The text came from a number I didn't recognize, but someone at this table knew I was being watched, knew I was being recorded. My eyes swept the room casually, taking in every detail like I was just an old woman admiring their decor. Then I saw it, the bookshelf behind Julian, a phone propped between two hardcover books, its lens facing directly at me. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my face peaceful, took another slow bite of pot roast. Julian leaned forward across the table, his voice dripping with false concern that made my skin crawl. "Mom, you seem really distracted today. Are you feeling all right? Have you been forgetting things again lately?" His emphasis on that word again was deliberate, calculated, meant to plant a seed. Simone nodded sympathetically beside him, but her eyes gleamed with something that wasn't sympathy at all, something hungry and cold. I realized then, they wanted me confused on camera, wanted me to look incompetent, wanted footage they could use against me. I smiled wider, let my voice soften with fake emotion. "Oh, I'm just thinking about your father, sweetheart. You know how I get emotional this time of year. Everything reminds me of him." I let my voice waver slightly on the last words, watched them exchange a look across the table. That look told me everything I needed to know. They thought they had me. They thought I was the fool sitting at this table, the easy target, the confused old widow. But I'd been playing chess since before either of them were born, and I was already planning my next 10 moves while they celebrated their first. Cleo's phone suddenly lit up on the table beside her water glass. She glanced down at it, then up at me, her young eyes full of warning and fear and something that looked like desperation. That's when I knew with absolute certainty, she'd sent that text message. My brave, beautiful granddaughter was trying to save me from her own parents, risking everything to warn me. The question now was, what exactly were Julian and Simone planning to do with this recording they were making? And how far were they willing to go to get what they wanted from me? I made a decision in that moment that would change everything. I decided to give them exactly what they wanted, to hand them the rope they'd use to hang themselves. If Julian and Simone needed footage of a confused, declining old woman for whatever scheme they were running, I'd deliver an Oscar-worthy performance. But every word I said would be carefully chosen, every mistake deliberately planted like a landmine. They wanted to trap me, but they just walked straight into mine instead, and they had no idea. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about the house lately," I said slowly, stirring my mashed potatoes in circles like I'd forgotten what I was doing. "It's so big now, so terribly empty without your father. Sometimes I walk into a room and completely forget why I went there in the first place." I laughed, shaky and uncertain, the sound of a woman losing her grip. Julian's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Simone leaned in closer, practically salivating. They were sharks who just smelled blood in the water, and they had absolutely no idea I was the ocean about to swallow them whole. That must be so incredibly hard for you, Mom, Julian said, his voice oozing false sympathy that made me want to throw my plate at his face. Have you thought seriously about downsizing? Maybe moving somewhere with, people around who could help you with daily things? There it was, the first hook, cast out and waiting. They wanted me to admit I couldn't handle living alone anymore. I could already see it playing in a courtroom, edited clips of me confessing my own incompetence to strangers in black robes. I nodded slowly, deliberately letting confusion cloud my features. Sometimes I think about that, I really do. The bills are getting so complicated now. Property taxes, insurance premiums, maintenance costs, utilities. Your father always handled those things, and now I'm drowning in paperwork. I paused for effect, then added with perfect careful precision, though I did meet with the estate lawyer last month about it all. What was his name again? Benjamin? No, wait, Nathaniel. Nathaniel Cross. Such a nice man, very thorough, asked me all sorts of questions about the family. Simone's fork stopped halfway to her mouth, frozen in midair. Julian's practiced smile tightened at the corners, became something harder and more dangerous. I watched the calculation flash across both their faces simultaneously. They clearly hadn't expected me to mention meeting with a lawyer. They hadn't planned for that little detail. Good. That tiny seed of doubt was exactly what I needed planted in their minds. Let them lie awake tonight wondering what I'd discussed with Nathaniel, what legal protections might already be in place, what traps might already be set. We could help with all that financial stuff, Mom, Simone offered, her voice honey-sweet and poison-laced in equal measure. Julian's actually been looking into some wonderful options for you. Living facilities with full support staff, medical professionals on site 24/7. You wouldn't have to worry about a single thing ever again. She reached across the table, patted my hand with fingers that felt cold. Her touch felt like a snake sliding across my skin, and I wanted to recoil, but I didn't. I pulled my hand back slowly, clutched my napkin in my lap like a frightened old woman seeking comfort. That's very thoughtful of you, dear, very kind. But I've actually been documenting everything lately, writing it all down in my journal so I don't forget important things. Dates, names, conversations, financial transactions. The lawyer specifically suggested it, said it's important to keep detailed records of everything. Especially financial records and any discussions about my assets or my future. I saw Julian's jaw clench, saw a muscle twitch in his cheek. Cleo was staring down at her plate, her shoulders tense and rigid. The trap was baiting itself perfectly, and they were too greedy to see it. After lunch ended, Simone insisted on showing me their newly renovated guest bathroom, her hand firm on my elbow like she was afraid I'd fall. As we walked through their house, I noticed another phone on the kitchen counter, this one carefully positioned and angled toward the dining room where we'd been sitting. They weren't just recording me, they were documenting everything from multiple strategic angles, building a comprehensive case. This wasn't amateur hour, wasn't some spontaneous decision. Someone had planned this carefully, professionally, had thought through every detail. The question was who, and what was the endgame? In the bathroom, Simone closed the door firmly behind us, shutting out the world. Violet, she said, using my first name like a weapon instead of with affection, Julian and I have been talking seriously, and we think it's time we had a real conversation about your future. You're not getting any younger, none of us are, and living alone in that big house, it's just not safe anymore. Something could happen, and no one would even know. I let my eyes well up with tears, played the fragile widow role to perfection. I know I'm slowing down, I can feel it every day. Sometimes I look at bills and the numbers just swim together on the page. The mortgage payment, the utility bills, the homeowner's insurance, the property taxes, it's all so overwhelming, so much to keep track of. I wasn't behind on a single payment, hadn't been late once in 40 years, but they didn't need to know that truth. I was feeding them exactly what they wanted to hear, every word carefully chosen. The house must be worth quite a bit now in today's market, Simone said, her voice carefully casual, but I heard the greed underneath it like a drumbeat. There it was, the real motive, finally exposed. My home sat on 3 beautiful acres in a neighborhood that had exploded in property value over the last decade. Real estate agents had been leaving business cards in my mailbox for months, calling with unsolicited offers. The property was worth close to $900,000 now, maybe more with the right buyer. "Oh, I honestly don't know about that," I said vaguely, waving my hand dismissively. "Your father bought this place for $60,000 back in 1979. It seems impossible it could be worth much more than we paid, maybe $100,000 at most." I watched her eyes actually gleam with triumph. She thought I was completely clueless about the real value, thought I'd be easy to manipulate into a quick sale far below market price, probably with them pocketing the substantial difference while I ended up with pennies. We returned to the dining room where Julian was having an intense, whispered conversation with Cleo, his voice low and urgent, his body language aggressive. They stopped talking abruptly when we entered the room, both freezing like guilty children caught stealing cookies. Cleo looked at me with such profound sadness it broke my heart into pieces. She knew exactly what her parents were doing, understood the full scope of their betrayal, and she was trapped between love and loyalty, between right and wrong. I smiled at her gently across the room, tried to tell her with my eyes that I understood her position, that I wasn't the helpless victim they all thought I was. As I gathered my purse and coat to leave, Julian walked me to the front door, his hand on my shoulder. "Mom, I want you to meet with someone tomorrow. His name is Desmond Greer. He's a financial advisor who specializes in helping seniors with estate planning and asset management. I've already set up an appointment for you at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Simone and I will come with you, of course, make sure you understand everything he explains." It wasn't phrased as a request or a suggestion. It was the next step in their carefully planned scheme, and now I knew exactly what was coming, could see the whole picture finally forming. If you're enjoying this story of strength and resilience, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling us what you think will happen next. Your support keeps this channel going strong, and we read every single comment. Now, let's continue with Violet's story. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen with all the lights blazing and made a detailed list. Not the confused ramblings of a declining old woman, but a strategic battle plan worthy of a general preparing for war. Julian and Simone wanted my house, wanted my savings, wanted my independence and dignity. They were going to use those recordings to prove I was mentally incompetent, then petition the court for power of attorney or maybe even full guardianship. Once they controlled my finances, I'd lose absolutely everything I'd spent a lifetime building. I called Nathaniel Cross at 9 p.m., knowing he'd still be awake. He was my late husband's attorney, had been our close friend for 30 years, had been at our wedding and at Robert's funeral. "Nathaniel, I need your help urgently, and I need you to trust me completely without asking too many questions right now." I explained everything in careful detail, the recording at lunch, the elaborate setup, the appointment with Desmond Greer tomorrow. I told him about Julian's leading questions, about Simone's barely concealed greed, about the multiple cameras strategically positioned to catch every confused moment I'd performed for their benefit. Nathaniel was quiet for a long, heavy moment after I finished. Then he said, his voice tight with controlled anger, "Violet, this is textbook elder financial abuse, and it's far more common than most people realize. If they're recording you to build a case for incompetency proceedings, they've almost certainly already consulted with Desmond Greer, probably weeks ago. He's known in certain legal circles for helping families gain control of elderly relatives' assets. Not always legally, and definitely not always ethically. He's been investigated before but never formally charged." We talked strategy for over an hour, our voices low and serious. Nathaniel had a plan forming, but it required me to continue the performance perfectly, to walk into tomorrow's appointment and play the confused widow without a single mistake. "Give them enough rope to hang themselves with," he said grimly. "But Violet, you need to understand, every single word you say to Greer will be recorded and used against you in court. You need to be very, very careful, very deliberate with every syllable." After we hung up, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from Cleo. "Grandma, please don't go to that meeting tomorrow. Mom and Dad are planning something really bad. They've been talking about getting control of your money and selling the house as fast as possible. I heard them practicing exactly what to say to make you look confused and scared. Please, you have to protect yourself. I'm so sorry I can't do more." I texted back immediately, "Sweet girl, I know exactly what they're doing, and I promise you I'm not the victim here. But I need you to do something important for me. When you're at school tomorrow, I need you to stay there until I personally call you. No matter what your parents say, no matter what excuse they give, don't come home until you hear my voice. Can you do that for me?" She responded within seconds, "I trust you completely, Grandma. Please be careful. I love you." I spent the rest of that long night preparing for battle. I pulled out financial documents from my file cabinet, made multiple copies of everything important: bank statements, property deeds, my will, the trust documents Robert and I had established years ago. I recorded a video on my phone, clearly stating my full mental competence, the current date, and my specific concerns about Julian and Simone's intentions and actions. I sent encrypted copies to Nathaniel and to my sister Margaret in Oregon. If something happened to me, if they managed to pull off whatever they were planning, there would be evidence, there would be proof of the truth. Desmond Greer's office was all expensive leather chairs and artificial plants, carefully designed to look trustworthy and successful and expensive. He greeted us at the door with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his calculating eyes, shook my hand too long, held it too firmly. Julian and Simone flanked me like prison guards, steering me by both elbows to a chair facing Desmond's massive desk. I noticed the camera mounted in the corner immediately, its red recording light blinking steadily like a malevolent eye watching everything. "Mrs. Harlow, your son has expressed some serious concerns about your ability to manage your financial affairs independently," Desmond began, his voice professionally sympathetic in that practiced way. "This is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, nothing at all. Many people your age find financial matters increasingly overwhelming as they get older. That's exactly why we're here today, to help make things easier and safer for you." The condescension dripped from every word like honey laced with arsenic, sweet on the surface but poison underneath. I let my hands shake slightly as I clutched my purse in my lap, played the frightened old woman perfectly. I do get confused sometimes, more and more lately. The bills, all the paperwork, the financial decisions. My husband Robert always handled absolutely everything, and now I'm lost without him. Julian nodded encouragingly beside me, reached over to pat my shoulder like a loving son. Simone had her phone out, I noticed from the corner of my eye, recording from her lap at an angle. They wanted this documented from every possible angle, wanted multiple copies of my admission of incompetence for their legal case. Desmond slid a thick stack of papers across his polished desk toward me. "This is a power of attorney document. It simply allows Julian to help you with financial decisions when needed, paying bills, managing investments, handling property matters, that sort of everyday thing. You'd still be in complete control, of course, absolutely in charge. He'd just be there to help when things get confusing or overwhelming." It was a blatant lie, and everyone in that room knew it. Once Julian had power of attorney, I'd have no control at all over my own life. I picked up the expensive pen he offered, let it hover over the signature line at the bottom of the page. My hand trembled convincingly. Then I set the pen down carefully. I should probably have my lawyer look at this first before I sign anything important. Nathaniel Cross always tells me never to sign any legal document without having him review it thoroughly. He's very particular about that. The temperature in that office dropped 10 degrees instantly. Julian's hand clenched hard on the armrest of his chair. Simone stopped recording, her face going pale. "Mom, there's absolutely no need for that," Julian said quickly, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "We're family. This is just a simple formality to make things easier for everyone. Nathaniel doesn't need to be involved in every little decision you make." But I could see the panic flickering behind his eyes like a trapped animal. They hadn't expected me to mention my lawyer again, hadn't planned for this particular resistance. Their carefully constructed trap was beginning to crack and crumble around the edges. Desmond cleared his throat professionally, tried to regain control of the situation. "Of course, if you'd feel more comfortable having your attorney present for this, we can certainly reschedule for another time. Though I should mention that Julian has expressed concerns about your memory issues, and any delays in getting these important legal protections in place could be, well, they could be quite problematic if something were to happen to you. The threat was subtle but absolutely clear: sign now, or we'll use your hesitation as even more proof of your incompetence and confusion. Thank you all for the incredible support on this channel. If you're on the edge of your seat wondering what happens next, smash that like button and share this video with someone who loves a good comeback story. We're just getting to the absolute best part. Let's continue. I left Desmond Greer's office that afternoon without signing a single page. Julian drove me home in angry, oppressive silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Simone sat in the back seat behind us, furiously texting someone, her thumbs flying across her phone screen. I played confused and apologetic the whole drive, said I was just being silly and paranoid, that maybe I'd sign the papers tomorrow after thinking about it overnight. But we all knew the game had fundamentally shifted. I'd shown a clear flash of resistance, and they were scrambling to adjust their plans. That evening around 7, Cleo showed up at my front door unannounced. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, mascara streaked down her young cheeks. "They're so angry, Grandma. Dad's been on the phone all night with Uncle Roman. They're planning something else now, something worse than before. I heard Dad say they need to move much faster, that you're not as confused as they thought you were, that you're more aware than they expected." She was shaking visibly, terrified of her own parents and what they might be capable of doing. I pulled her inside quickly, locked the door behind us, made her hot tea with honey the way she liked. I let her cry on my shoulder for a long time, stroked her hair like I had when she was small. "Cleo, sweetheart, I need you to tell me everything you've heard, every conversation, every plan they've discussed. I know this is incredibly hard, asking you to go against your own parents, but what they're doing is wrong. They're trying to steal from me, trying to take everything I have, and I desperately need your help to stop them." She told me everything through her tears, every terrible detail. Roman, Julian's older brother, was a doctor, a psychiatrist, actually, with a successful practice. They were planning to have him perform an evaluation of me, have him declare me mentally unfit and incompetent. With a doctor's official statement combined with those edited recordings, they could petition the court for emergency guardianship, could bypass the power of attorney entirely. I'd be declared incompetent by a judge, and Julian would gain complete, absolute control of my entire life and all my assets. "When?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage burning like fire in my chest. "When exactly are they planning this evaluation?" Cleo wiped her eyes with the tissue I handed her. "Friday morning. Roman's driving in Friday morning, really early. Mom told me to stay home from school that day because there might be a difficult situation. They're expecting you to resist, Grandma. They're going to say your resistance and paranoia prove you're mentally unstable and confused, that you're a danger to yourself." I called Nathaniel immediately, explained this new development. We talked for 2 intense hours, building a counter-strategy that would completely dismantle their entire scheme piece by piece. He contacted a colleague who specialized specifically in elder abuse cases, a woman named Dr. Penelope Swift who could perform her own independent evaluation of my mental competence. We scheduled it for Thursday morning, exactly 1 day before Roman's planned ambush, giving us time to build our defense. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Julian as a little boy. I remembered how he'd hold my hand tight when crossing the street, how he'd run to me crying when he scraped his knee, how he'd made me cards on Mother's Day with his careful child's handwriting. Somewhere along the way, that sweet, loving child had become a man who could look his mother directly in the eye and plot to steal everything she had. Simone had poisoned him over the years, or maybe the poison was always there inside him, just waiting for the right circumstances to bloom. Either way, my son was gone, replaced by a dangerous stranger wearing his familiar face. Thursday morning, Dr. Penelope Swift arrived at my house at exactly 8 a.m. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 50 years old, with kind, intelligent eyes and a firm, professional handshake. She spent 3 full hours with me, comprehensive cognitive tests, detailed memory exercises, extensive discussions about my daily life, my financial management, my future plans. I showed her my meticulously organized files, my checkbook balance to the penny going back 5 years, my calendar with appointments marked clearly in my own handwriting. "Mrs. Harlow," she said finally, setting down her pen, "you are one of the sharpest 72-year-olds I've ever assessed in 20 years of practice. Your cognitive function is excellent, your memory is remarkably strong, and you clearly have full capacity to manage your own affairs independently. Anyone claiming otherwise is either completely incompetent themselves or deliberately lying for personal gain." She paused, her expression hardening. "Nathaniel told me about your son's plans. What they're attempting is elder abuse, and it's absolutely criminal." I told her everything, about the recordings at Sunday lunch, about my deliberate performance, about Desmond Greer's office and the pressure to sign. Dr. Swift's expression grew darker with every detail. "They're building a completely false case against you. Those edited recordings, combined with a complicit doctor's fraudulent statement, could actually convince a judge to grant emergency guardianship, at least temporarily. By the time you could fight it properly in court, which takes months, they'd have already sold your house and drained every account you have." We spent another hour crafting her official report together, documenting my competence in precise medical and legal terms that would stand up to any scrutiny in court. She gave me 3 signed copies, told me to keep them in separate secure locations. "Tomorrow, when their psychiatrist brother comes, I want you to record everything. Every question he asks, every answer you give. If he's planning to falsify his evaluation, which seems likely, we need concrete evidence of his fraud." That afternoon, Cleo texted urgently, "They moved it up. Roman's coming tonight instead of tomorrow morning. Mom said they can't wait anymore, that you're getting too suspicious, that they need to act now. He'll be at your house at 7 p.m. sharp. They're bringing Uncle Desmond too. Grandma, I'm really scared for you." I was scared too, honestly, but I was also ready. I was armed now. I called Nathaniel immediately, told him about the sudden change in their plans. Nathaniel moved with impressive speed. By 6 p.m., he arrived at my house with Dr. Swift and another man, a private investigator named Marcus Chin who specialized in surveillance and documentation of evidence. Marcus set up professional recording equipment throughout my living room, hidden cameras that would capture absolutely everything from multiple angles. "If they're going to ambush you tonight," Nathaniel said grimly, "we're going to document every single second of it, everything they say and do." At exactly 7 p.m., my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Julian, Simone, Roman, and Desmond Greer standing on my porch like an execution squad. Roman carried a black leather medical bag. Desmond held a thick folder of documents. Julian's face was set and cold and determined. "Mom," he said, his voice hard, "we need to talk seriously. We're very concerned about you, and we're not leaving this house until we get this situation sorted out once and for all. We're in the absolute heart of the story now, and things are about to explode. If you want to see how Violet takes down her enemies, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next." They settled into my living room like they owned the place. Roman sat in my late husband's favorite chair, the leather one by the fireplace, opened his medical bag with practiced, professional efficiency. "Violet, I'm here because Julian has expressed serious concerns about some changes in your behavior lately. I just want to ask you a few standard questions, run through some basic cognitive assessments. This is completely standard procedure, nothing to worry about at all." I played along perfectly, gave them exactly the performance they expected. I answered his questions slowly, hesitated over simple math problems I could solve in my sleep, fumbled with remembering specific dates and names. I watched him making careful notes in his leather journal, saw the satisfied, triumphant glance he exchanged with Julian across the room. They thought they had me completely. They thought I was demonstrating exactly the confusion and decline they needed to prove their case in court. "Tell me, Violet," Roman said, his voice gentle but his eyes calculating and cold, "do you ever forget to pay your bills on time? Have you had any trouble managing your finances lately?" It was a leading question, carefully designed to get me to incriminate myself, to admit incompetence on camera. I glanced subtly at Nathaniel, who sat quietly in the corner of the room near the bookshelf. They demanded to know who he was, and I'd simply said he was my attorney, which had made them nervous but not enough to leave. "Sometimes," I admitted, letting my voice waver with emotion. "The numbers get so confusing, all mixed up in my head. Property taxes are $14,000 annually, homeowners insurance is $3,200, utilities average $450 monthly, and the house maintenance reserve account sits at $18,000 in the credit union downtown. It's just so overwhelming keeping track of it all." I watched Roman's pen stop moving across the page. Those weren't the words of a confused woman, those were precise figures, accurate to the dollar. Julian leaned forward in his chair, his face reddening. "Mom, you just said you get confused, but you literally just rattled off all those exact numbers." I smiled at him sweetly, innocently. "Did I? I suppose I did. You know, Roman, it's really interesting. Your brother told Desmond Greer that I've been having serious memory issues. He told him I can't manage my bills at all. But my checkbook's been balanced perfectly for 40 years, I've never missed a single payment, and my credit score is 810. So which is it? Am I confused, or has Julian been lying to everyone?" The room went completely silent. Simone's face drained of all color. Desmond Greer stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "I think there's been a serious misunderstanding here. Perhaps we should reschedule this entire conversation for another time." But Nathaniel was already standing, moving to block the door with his body. "No one's leaving yet. We're not finished here, not even close." He nodded to Marcus, who emerged from the kitchen holding a laptop computer. "We have some recordings we'd like you all to see right now." Marcus opened the laptop, pressed play. There on the screen was Sunday's lunch, filmed from Julian's hidden phone, but this version showed what I'd really been doing while performing my confusion. Every time I'd mentioned a specific financial detail, every reference to Nathaniel, every precise piece of information embedded in my rambling stories, it was all there, crystal clear, proving I'd been deliberately baiting them, proving my complete competence while they thought they were filming my decline and confusion. We didn't, that's taken out of context," Julian stammered, his face flushing red with panic, but Marcus was already playing the next video. This one was audio only, recorded from Simone's phone, capturing their conversation in the car on the way to Desmond's office earlier that week. "She's got to have at least $1 million in total assets between the house and her savings accounts. Once we get power of attorney, we sell the house fast, below market if we have to. We can easily pocket 300,000, maybe more, and she'll never know the difference because she'll be locked away in some care facility." Simone's voice on the recording was cold, calculating, completely devoid of any affection or concern. "Desmond said we can move her to that place in Riverside, costs only $1,800 a month, barely more than assisted living costs. She'll think she's getting quality care, but it's basically a nursing home. We can keep her there until she dies, living comfortably off her money the whole time. She's got nobody else who'll question it." Roman's face went gray as ash. "I didn't know about any of this detailed planning. Julian, you told me she was actually declining mentally, that this was a legitimate medical concern, that I'd be helping her." But Julian wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at Nathaniel with pure, undiluted hatred in his eyes. "You set us up. You told her to act confused, to bait us deliberately. This whole thing was an elaborate trap from the beginning." "No," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a blade through silk. "You set the trap when you decided to record me at Sunday lunch without my knowledge or consent. You set the trap when you planted multiple cameras to catch me looking confused and declining. You set the trap when you called Desmond Greer before ever having a single honest conversation with me about your concerns. I just recognized what you were doing and decided to turn your own weapon against you." Dr. Penelope Swift stepped forward from where she'd been waiting silently in the dining room. "I'm Dr. Penelope Swift, and I conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment of Mrs. Harlow this morning. She is completely mentally competent, with excellent memory, clear reasoning, and full capacity to manage her own affairs independently. Any medical professional claiming otherwise would be committing fraud and violating their oath." She looked directly at Roman. "Which is exactly what you were about to do." Nathaniel laid out papers on my coffee table, arranged them like playing cards. "These are copies of a police report I filed this afternoon, documenting the illegal surveillance, the attempted financial exploitation, and the conspiracy to commit elder abuse. These are copies of text messages between Julian, Simone, and Desmond Greer planning this entire scheme over the last 2 months. And this," he held up another official document, "is an emergency restraining order preventing any of you from contacting Mrs. Harlow, entering her property, or taking any action whatsoever regarding her finances or medical care." Desmond Greer tried to leave, headed for the door, but Marcus blocked his path. "Mr. Greer, you should know that I've forwarded all this evidence to the state licensing board this afternoon. Helping families defraud elderly relatives isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Your career is over." Desmond's professional polish dissolved instantly into panic, his face crumbling. Julian stood up, his hands shaking with rage or fear or both. "You're my mother. How can you do this to your own son? I'm your child." I looked at him, this dangerous stranger who wore my child's face, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "I'm not doing anything to you, Julian. You did this entirely to yourself. You came into my home planning to steal everything I have, to lock me away and profit from my death. The only question now is whether you're going to face criminal charges or if you're going to walk away right now and never contact me again." The next morning, Nathaniel called to tell me Julian, Simone, and Desmond Greer had all been arrested the previous night. They'd apparently gone back to my house after the restraining order was served, attempting to intimidate me into dropping all the charges against them. Marcus's surveillance cameras caught everything, every threat, every illegal trespass. They'd violated a court order within hours of receiving it, which meant mandatory jail time now, not just fines and probation and warnings. Roman called me later that day, crying. He swore repeatedly that he hadn't known the full extent of their plans, that Julian had lied to him about my condition, that he'd thought he was helping. I wanted desperately to believe him, wanted to think at least one of my sons had some decency left, some shred of the boys I'd raised. But trust, once broken so completely, doesn't heal easily or quickly. I told him I needed time, that maybe someday we could rebuild something, but not now. Not yet. Not while the wounds were still bleeding. Cleo moved in with me that same week. The court granted me temporary guardianship after Simone and Julian were denied bail. Apparently, investigators had discovered they'd been planning to flee to Mexico with whatever money they could grab before the trial started. My brave granddaughter had lost her parents to their own greed and lies, but she'd gained safety, stability, and a grandmother who would protect her with everything she had left in this world. The legal proceedings took 6 long months. Julian and Simone eventually pled guilty to attempted elder abuse, illegal surveillance, and conspiracy to commit fraud. They each got 3 years in prison, with 5 additional years of probation after their release. Desmond Greer lost his license permanently and got 18 months for his role in the scheme. The judge ordered them to pay full restitution for legal fees and emotional damages, money I'd probably never see, but the principle mattered more than the cash ever could. I sold the house eventually. Too many bad memories haunted those rooms now, too many ghosts of betrayal lurking in corners where cameras had been hidden, where family dinners had turned into traps. Cleo and I bought a smaller place across town, something manageable and safe and new, where we could build fresh memories untainted by greed and lies. She's thriving in school now, talking excitedly about college, about becoming a lawyer like Nathaniel. She wants to protect people the way we protected ourselves, wants to fight for others who can't fight alone. Sometimes late at night I think about that Sunday lunch, about the text message that changed everything. If Cleo hadn't warned me, if I hadn't recognized the trap, I'd be in some facility now, drugged and docile while my son sold everything I'd worked for. But I wasn't the helpless widow they thought I was. I was a woman who'd survived 72 years of life's challenges, who'd buried a husband and raised children and built a life from nothing but determination and love. They thought age made me weak and easy to manipulate. They learned, far too late, that age had made me wise instead. And wisdom, combined with evidence and a good lawyer, is the most powerful weapon in the world. They came for everything I had, planned to take my home and my dignity and my future. Instead, they lost everything they were. And I'm finally, truly, completely free. Free to live my life on my terms, free to protect my granddaughter, free to spend my remaining years in peace. They wanted to write my ending. Instead, I wrote theirs. Thank you so much for watching this story of resilience, justice, and the power of staying sharp no matter your age. If this story moved you, inspired you, or taught you something about protecting yourself and your loved ones, please subscribe to Never Too Old channel, hit that like button, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Write in the comments what part of Violet's story resonated most with you. We read every single comment and we love hearing from our community. Remember, our best chapters can happen at any age, and no one gets to write your story but you. Stay strong, stay wise, and we'll see you in the next video.